guys feeling this wonderful evening today? I am so excited to be here. I'm going to be sharing a little bit with you guys today. My name is Colby Maxwell. I am on the teaching team here at Freedom House. I am a student ministry assistant. So basically, if you have a child from all the way to 5th grade up to 25 years old, and yes, 25-year-olds are still children, I somehow interact with them on a regular basis. So pray for me a little bit, guys. It's going to be a lot of fun today. And like I was saying, our teaching team actually is something really cool. We have a teaching team that will actually go between every single one of our campuses. And on a regular basis, we will have a live teacher at every single campus for every single service. So for our central campus here, and for our South End campus, and for our new Lake Norman campus, which is on the way, coming this next year, very, very soon. We're going to be all around. You'll be seeing a lot of us. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. And speaking of a whole lot of fun, my parents, if you didn't see, they are the senior pastors of this church, and they are out on their 25-year anniversary. What that means is we get to get a little wild in our Saturday night service tonight. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. They left me speaking for some reason, so it's going to get a little crazy up in here tonight. And I'm really excited. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. If you don't know, on the video we showed you here just a few seconds ago, we were actually in the series that we are calling Restoration Hardware. And it's been really cool. I actually get to close out the series today and tomorrow. It's going to be our final installment, if you will, of kind of this collection of talks, if you will, on our series. And the reason I'm calling it a collection of talks is because it actually involves a two-way conversation. So it's actually a talk. So I need you guys to talk back to me tonight as we're going to be continuing on tonight. So if you hear something good, you got to tell me about it. If you hear something bad, tell me about it so I don't feel bad about it. If you hear something really cool, give me a quick clap or something. So let's practice right now. Let's give the Lord a little quick praise. It is okay to be excited on Saturday night service. It is okay to get hype to be in church on Saturday nights because we are going to be having a whole lot of fun today. You know, speaking about my parents up there, I think something really cool that I'm going to be talking about today, it kind of involves the concept of family. I think that we all, in some way, come from a family. Anybody have a crazy family in here? Like I'm talking like you got a crazy family. I know what y'all talking about. So let me tell you a little bit about me. I grew up a church kid, right? And just because I grew up a church kid doesn't mean that I didn't grow up in a pretty crazy family. Some of y'all may grow up in families that aren't from church, or maybe you grew up in some broken households. My household was completely fine, but we were crazy nonetheless. I'm talking pretty much all it means to be a church kid is that it's socially acceptable to get beaten no matter where you are in public. So no matter where I was, like at Harris Teeter, I grabbed something off the shelf, boom, boom, put that thing back down there. No matter where I am in life, still now to this day, still being a church kid, it is still socially acceptable for me to get beat by my mother no matter where we are in the world. Something else I think of when I think of kind of my crazy family, we all have crazy family stories, I'm sure. When I was a small child, I would, do something wrong, and I would reach my hand in the cookie jar, or maybe I would play video games way late up at night, and then I would come downstairs the next day, and my mom would be sitting at the table, and, she has, I don't know what else to call it besides the mom look. You guys know what I'm talking about? Just staring at me across the table, and so I'm looking at her, and I'm sitting there, I'm a young child, and she goes, "Colby, did you do anything last night?" And I'm just like, "Well, of course no, Mom. I'm a church kid. I'm a perfect little being floating around. I don't do anything wrong." And she goes, "It's not what Jesus told me." And so I'm like, I don't know where you're getting your information from, Mom, but the Jesus I know wouldn't tell you anything like that because that's not true. And my Lord's not a liar. So she then stands before me and tells me exactly what I did in detail. And so I go to my room that night, and I go there, and I'm in prayer, and I'm sitting there, and I look up, I'm like, we're keeping this thing casual between you and I because I don't know what you're going to tell that woman next. I don't know what else is going to happen. Growing up church kid, growing up in a crazy family. The reason I want to talk about families today is because no matter what circumstance in life we've come from, we all have some type of family. No matter where we come from in life, whether it's a broken household or a crazy church household like mine, we all come from some type of family. And I want to talk about it from a particular kind of perspective today that I think I know a little bit about. And I want to talk about it kind of from the perspective of being a child, which I know plenty about. I am a child in many ways. But I want to talk about it from a perspective of being a child because I could come up here and I could talk about marriage, even though I don't think it would have much merit to it. I could talk about what it looks like to have a healthy relationship with your kids. I also don't have a lot of knowledge in that at this current moment in my life. But I think that at some point in our life, we've all been recognized as a son or a daughter. Whether that's in our families, whether that's in church, no matter where we are in life, we've all been recognized at some point in our life as a son or a daughter. And I think that something really important that we've been covering in this whole Restoration Hardware series is this whole concept of restoring things that are broken. And I think that there's an actual attack on families because I think families are the physical representation of the kingdom of heaven. And I think that you can find two very important correlations between families here on earth and the kingdom of heaven and the fact that there's a marriage between a man and a woman and there's a relationship between a father and his children. When I talk about marriage, I want to talk about marriage between, of course, a man and a woman, and then not the aspect that you're thinking about. I want to talk about how there's kind of a relationship between man and a woman and the church, which is the bridegroom of Christ. It's the first important relationship. And secondarily, that there's a relationship between the father and the children. And you want to know who the children of God are. That is you and I today. So as we continue on with this conversation of what it looks like to restore the broken things in our life, let's really narrow in our focus today and kind of center our focus around the concept of what it looks like to restore something I think the enemy is attacking in our country and our life right now. The concept of the family. And I think that when the devil actually attacks our family, he's actually beginning to distort our perception of what it looks like to understand the kingdom of heaven. If he can wedge his way somehow through a broken family or a broken relationship, he can somehow wedge his way between your understanding of what it looks like to have a heavenly father. If you hear something good, I told you. You guys can clap for it, okay? Your tepid applause is not flattering. I want to talk about relational restoration today. I want to talk about relational restoration. I want to talk about that through this verse I want to talk about today. It's in Colossians chapter 3, verses 12. And if you look today, I brought my special Bible. If you want to find out why I'm using this Bible, it is my sister's Bible, Cabell. She brought this for me today. And if you want to find out why I'm using this Bible, as pretty as it is with its wonderful tabs, I will be explaining this at the end of the sermon, so you got to stick around for it, at least for something, right? So we're going to be talking about that today. So if you could turn to Colossians chapter 3, verse 12. I want to talk about a very specific thing today as we engage in our talk and our discussion upon restoration hardware. Restoration hardware. Chapter 3, verses 12. Therefore, as God's chosen people, look to your neighbor and say you're chosen. Louder, you're chosen. Holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance, forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. That's kind of what we're going to be talking about of tonight. Just to let you into a little bit of what I've been going through in my life, I recently have been looking for a house. So for the past couple of months, there's this really cool program happening in Charlotte, North Carolina right now where like the government will partially fund you for your first-time home buyers. And I was like, man, I got to hop up on that. It's going to be super awesome. And so what I would do after every single work day, after 5 o'clock, me and my buddies and my mom, get into the car, and we would drive around the city looking for kind of like a house that was within my price range, And so I would be driving around the city with my mom and my buddies, and we would be looking around, and we would come upon these houses, and if we're going to be honest, and I'm going to be honest with you today, the houses that we were looking at within my price range made me a little bit nervous. I'd pull up to the house, I'd pull up to the curb, and I'd be looking at it like, there's no way I can live in this thing. Like I'd walk in it, and it would be like gnats coming up out the carpet at my face. I'm blinded by them. I'm like, oh man, this is a great deal. Like wiping gnats out of my eyes. And I'm like, man, what is going on in this price range that I'm at? And so we're driving around and I realized that the concept of buying a house that I had in my head really wasn't how it operated, right? In my mind, I was like, well, I'm just going to go out and I have this number that I'm going to pay for a house. And I'm going to go out and there's just going to be a perfect little household sitting right there. And I'm going to be like, here's my offer. And they're going to maybe jostle back a couple numbers with me. And then all of a sudden I'm going to be living in a brand new house within a week or two, right? No. And so I would be pulling up to these houses and I realized something very important that day. Restoration's a lot harder than buying brand new. Restoration takes a lot more work. And within the price range that I was looking at, that's my only option. And something I want to tell you guys today is that our God, much like me looking for my house, God is a God into restoration. And he's not really a fan of buying brand new houses. He's more a fan of looking at things that are broken. He looks at things that are torn down. He looks at things that need paint on the walls. He looks at things no matter what we're going through, and he says, I want to restore that to a home that I can live in. I look at this broken thing, it's disgusting, it's tattered, it's dirty, and God looks at that, and while I see a difficult project, he sees a perfect opportunity. And he looks upon this great house and he says, man, I see potential in this thing. And as we continue on in our relationships today, we have to realize that no matter how broken down or beat down they may look like, God sees it as a possibility to bring a new household into your place right now. He sees it as an opportunity to build up something that was once broken and destroyed. God is a God of renovation. He is the best Chip and Joanna Gaines you have ever heard of. And to my dismay, they're canceling the show. Like, what, y'all? Like, I found that out today when I was looking it up. I was like, man, like, blew my mind. Just side note, not in my notes or anything, but like, blew my mind. I found out Chip and Joanna are leaving me. What am I gonna do on my Friday nights? It's bad, y'all. I think that in the verse of Colossians that I was showing you earlier, God is actually showing us kind of his blueprint for renovating relationships. And like I asked you to tell your neighbor, I think that the first thing we have to realize before we can actually pursue any renovations in our life is it starts off with saying that we are chosen. We are chosen. Much like the house that I was looking at, God has specifically chosen you. I believe that if you're sitting in this room today, you have been chosen by God for renovation. And if you're sitting in these chairs looking up at me today, God has said, I have a desire and I have elected you, some translations may say, I have chosen you to build up my house as a place that I can live in. And that every single person sitting in here today has been specifically chosen by God. I think that as human beings, I like to look at human nature a lot of times because I think in the nature of humanity, we can find some aspects of God. And I think that God has designed us with a desire to be chosen. I think that he has instilled within our hearts a desire that says like, man, I want someone to choose me. I remember back when I was in high school and when I was in middle school and elementary school, and it would be like, the kid with the broken leg, the band kid, and me to play football. And I was like, man, I hope I'm chosen today. Like God, I'm calling down upon every blessing you have on me because I know I don't want to be chosen last in the situation. And we all have a desire, and whether it's in sports, whether it's for that job promotion we have at work, whether it's in relationships, we all want to be chosen by that special someone. We all want to be chosen for that promotion. No matter what situation of life we're in, we all have a desire to be chosen. And so before we can even delve into the process of renovation, before we can ever begin to actually unpack what this verse actually means, we have to first recognize that we've been chosen specifically by God. We've been chosen by him. When I chose my house, something really important to note. I chose my house out and I recognized that it needed renovation. But just because I chose the house doesn't mean it was ready for me to live in. Just because I decided that was the house I was going to renovate doesn't mean that it was ready for me to move in the next day. It needed a little bit of work. Chosen does not equal complete. It equals ready and available. And so as we're looking upon our relationships, as we are chosen, it does require a little bit of work on our part. Some of you might require a little extra work on your part. So let's look at it today. First point I want to bring to you today is we got to empty. You got to empty. And I only have 3 points today, and they're 3 words each, so I'm keeping you guys easy note writing. Empty, E-M-P-T-Y. Like I was saying, I found the house that I was looking for, and like I was saying, it did require a lot of renovation. And so what I would do is I'd bring all my friends over because they only required 1 slice of pizza a day to run efficiently. And so what I would do is I would send them throughout the many rooms of the house, and I would say, do your work, break down things. And so we eventually accumulated this pile of debris and trash sitting outside of my house. Yeah, Josh knows about it. And let me tell you guys, man, the amount of staples that goes into putting staples in through carpet into hardwoods, oh my gosh, these people were staple happy, hours sitting there with a flathead screwdriver just talking about life, plucking up staples. I will always remember that in my life. And so we developed this huge pile of trash sitting out in front of my yard, and The icing on the cake and the cherry on top of the milkshake, if you will, was me and my friend Amato. And if you remember Amato, if you guys were here for the last sermon I did, I talked about me going and driving straight into a snowstorm and almost dying. Same friend here, so obviously it's gonna go really well. And so me and my friend Amato are sitting in the house, and it's around 12 o'clock at night, and we have the bright idea that at 12 o'clock at night, close to 1 a.m., we're like, hey, why don't we just remove the dishwasher right now? Like, what better time could there be to remove the dishwasher? And so my house is a 1960s ranch home, which one thing I learned, I will never forget this fact, I guarantee you, there's actually no shutoff valve from the dishwasher to the hot water heater on a 1960s ranch home, so let that speak for itself. Me and my friend Amada begin to yank and tug on this dishwasher. We get it about 2 feet out, and we were like, man, this thing is stuck in there. We also didn't realize that you had to drain the dishwasher. And so I'm sitting there literally like almost above my feet in water, like yanking on this dishwasher. And apparently you also have to turn off the electricity. So my friend and I are yanking on cables, standing in puddles of water inside of my house at 12:30. And if something would have gone wrong, it would have happened right there. And it would have been like, you walked into the house, you would have smelled us down the street. It would have been rough. So we ultimately, by the grace of God, did not die that day. Not knowing to turn the electricity off, pulled the dishwasher out, put it on top of the pile, and said, man, good day's work. We went home, and to my dismay, I wake up the next morning to a phone call, and apparently there are police all over at my house. And so I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, what else could be happening? And so me and my buddy, Amada, once again, we get in the car and we drive over, and there are police surrounding my house, and my mom's freaking out. Nothing had gone really that wrong, but that's what moms do, it's their job. And so she was freaking out, and so I'm freaking out because my mom's freaking out, and my friend's freaking out because I'm freaking out because my mom's freaking out, and we're all freaking out, and we don't know what's happening. We literally don't even know what's happening yet. We're just freaking out. And so we get to the house, and I go up to the police officer who's there, and they're like, sir, there's been a break-in. And what I realized that day is that someone had actually broken into the front of my house. They had busted through a hole in my window, and they had broken through it, and they had climbed through and were perusing my house as we had finally emptied the rest of this trash into the outside here today. And you know, I realized something very important that day. Like, as we had put all of this trash outside in front of the house, I think that when we empty the trash out of something, it actually places a target on its back. You guys know where I'm going with this? I think that when we begin to empty out the things that don't need to be in a household, it actually will paint a target upon our backs. I think that when we begin to empty the things out of a household that don't need to be there anymore, people will begin to take interest in it. I think that when we begin to destroy the things, the high places in our life, I think that when we begin to empty out our past relationships, empty out our past issues, and we put it into a big pile on display for everybody to see, the neighborhood is going to take some notice. And I think that when we are experiencing life and we go into the situation that we find, there's going to be some break-ins that happen. When you begin to empty the trash from your life, it paints an X upon your back. And I think that the devil will always try to break into your breakthrough. I think that no matter what we're doing in life, the devil will always attempt to find a way to break into the breakthrough that you've experienced in your life today. And that the breakthrough that we have of emptying the trash from our life, when we empty the things that are bad from our life, the devil will break into the breakthrough in order to stop you from experiencing anything past that. When you empty the things from your life, there's going to be a break-in on your breakthrough. We have to be expecting it. There's an X upon your back if you decide to remove the things from your life that God has called you to. There's going to be a break-in upon your breakthrough. Why? Because the value is evident when you empty the things that aren't. The value is evident when you remove the things from your life that don't need to be there anymore. When you put it all into a pile up on the front for everyone to see, the value is evident. And people begin to take notice. Something's up with this guy. He's been going to church a lot recently. Hey, you don't go to the parties with us anymore, man. What's up with that? Sorry, man, I'm just emptying my house out. Hey, you don't hang out with us anymore and get drunk on the weekends, bro. What's up? Sorry, man, I'm emptying my house out. We have to recognize that we can't allow the break-in to stop us from continuing on in our breakthrough today. Anyone out there in church today, Saturday night? My second point today is one, if you do watch Chip and Joanna games, you will recognize is we have to upfit. We We have to upfit. My first point was empty. My second point is upfit. Let's look at our blueprint again. As we look at Colossians today, it really does provide a really great blueprint here for what we can look at for restoring our relationships. It says this: clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Now, if we're taking a test, y'all, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I failed the test, like really bad. Like, we had to put these things on every single day. It says clothe ourselves in it. Otherwise, we're going to be running around naked all the time. There's a difference between naked and naked. One is 2 Ks and an I and a D. We're running around naked all day if we don't continuously clothe ourselves with our compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. So we emptied our house, right? But if we don't upfit it, if we don't bring these things into our life on a regular basis, if we don't fill it up with the things of God, with compassion, kindness, humility, and if we don't fill it up, then it's going to be a cold and dead house. It was not a home. It was just a house. And so, sure, we can empty everything out of our life. We can empty it all out. We can have an amazing restoration here at church. We can raise our hands. We can empty out the things of our life. But if we don't actually upfit the house, if we don't upfit ourselves with the things God has called us to, we're still going to remain cold and dead on the inside. We have to continuously upfit ourselves with this. And here, this is very important. I want everyone to really to think about this. And I realized this when I was kind of preparing and studying for this. I found this very important, and take it how you will, but I found this to be of great significance to me. I kind of did the antithesis of every single word here. What that means is I took the word and I found its antonym. So like the opposite of every word, I kind of looked it up and I laid it out into a sentence here, okay? And so I'm going to read the sentence for you. And this is actually the opposite of the upfit. So we have our words, right? Compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Here's the opposite. We have indifference, hatred, pride, hardness, and impatience. I think that we can recognize easily all 5 of those in our country today. And what that means to me is that there's an attack on relationship. And that if the devil can attack relationship, we experience these 5 things, then we begin to realize that there is a physical and spiritual attack on the structure of relationship. And if relationship goes, family will be a casualty. If relationship goes, family will be a casualty. And we are experiencing the beginnings of that. We are experiencing the beginnings of the attack on relationship. Division between brethren, indifference between one another, pride and hatred. Y'all, there's an attack on our country for relationships. We have to actively fight against this. And we can't just empty the house out and expect it to be okay. We have to realize that there's something active we have to do, clothe ourselves in it every single day because we default to sin. We default to those 5 words I mentioned earlier. We default to not doing those things. So we have to make sure we engage every single day, clothing ourselves in it. You have to put your clothes on every single day, y'all. You clothe yourselves in it so we can walk in it. You got to clothe yourself in it so we can begin to walk in it and be the Christians God has called us to be. Because we actually are the light shining in this country. We in this room have the potential, because of the scripture God has given us today, we have the potential to act as the lights God has called us to in our relationships. And maybe you don't have a family around you right now, but eventually you will. And that if we can get our relationships right and restored, our families will not suffer the casualty that the devil is trying to force upon us. Thirdly, today, my third point, we had empty, we had upfit. And thirdly, we have maintain. We have maintain. I think the hardest thing in my house is like maintaining it. Like it was fun to empty everything out, like it was really fun to upfit it and go shopping at IKEA and putting everything together and sitting there with my friends. But y'all, like somehow grass gets in my house every day. Like I don't know how the grass gets there. Like I will sweep my floor, I will go to bed, and I will wake up and it's like grass I don't know how it happens, right? And I think it's really important to recognize that we have to maintain the households that we just upfitted. We have to maintain them. It gives me anxiety. I'm like, man, I'm gonna open the door to this thing and I wanna have a nice peaceful morning and there's gonna be grass everywhere, there's gonna be food everywhere. I've gotten to the point now, and I'm recognizing it in retrospect, I've become my mother. Boy, take those shoes off before you get in that house. Boy, you can track grass all in this house. Talking to my friend, he's 5 years older than me. Take your shoes off before you come in here. I ain't sweeping again. I've become my mother. It literally gives me anxiety. And I relate to her now. Y'all better not tell her that. It's bad. If we don't maintain, we won't remain. If we don't maintain the households that we've begun to restore, we won't remain in them. We can empty it, we can upfit it, but if we don't do the regular maintenance that is required, we will not be able to remain in the households that we have built. I think using my illustration of my friend walking into the house with his shoes on, we have to leave what we've walked through at the door, or otherwise traces of it are going to show up in our household. We have to take what we've been walking through at the door, at the threshold of our relationships. Otherwise, it's going to show up in little bitty pieces everywhere. When I was tracking through my house, I had to leave at the threshold. Otherwise, it was going to show up in every other aspect, every room of my life. We have to leave what we've been walking through at the door in order to maintain those relationships. It's hard to keep it clean. It's hard to keep it clean. I want to close with this. To begin, to end where we began, really, you have been chosen for love and forgiveness. You have been chosen for love and forgiveness. The beginning of the verse that we talked about begins with God choosing us, and it ends with God loving and forgiving us. And I experienced this in a way that I'd never have before today, actually. So one of the ways that I prepare for sermons is I'll write it out, and I get my illustrations, and I'll figure out how I'm going to write it, and I'll practice going over it. And one of the ways that I practice is I'll actually go over to our South End campus, typically on a day where nobody's in it, and I will go into the auditorium and I will practice to the congregation of nobody. You guys are there in my heads, don't worry. And I'll practice to everybody, and just so I can figure out how I'm going to say things, how I'm going to deliver them. And I decided that I was going to do that this morning. I was going to go yesterday, couldn't do it. So I decided, I wake up early this morning. So I woke up at 7 o'clock, and I was like, I'm going to go. And it's a Saturday morning, so it was pretty early. And so I was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to practice this sermon, and I'm going to head home after that. It's going to be a nice little fun time with Colby. And I pull up to South End campus, and if you don't know, there's a big metal gate that kind of goes across the entrance of it that you have to get out of your car to open up. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm fiddling with the padlock, it's my nemesis, and I'm trying to get it, and I can't get it, and jangling it, and I'm punching it, and I'm cursing a little bit, and I can't get it, and I'm trying to get this padlock open, and I kind of hear like the shuffling of feet behind me, and I'm like, oh, someone's walking past me, but I didn't hear it continue past me. And I got a little bit nervous, actually, because in that area of town, actually during the construction of South End campus, somebody actually did get their car stolen, right at the same spot I was in. Someone actually just hopped in it and drove off. So I was a little nervous because I heard shuffling of feet behind me, and then it stops, and I'm sitting here holding the padlock I'm kind of afraid to turn around right now. I don't know what's going to happen. And I hear a voice behind me, and he's a guy, and he said, "Hey, man, you got a second? This happens today." And so I turn around, and there's a man standing before me. He's in extremely dirty clothes. I can immediately tell that he is a homeless man. And he stands before me, and he goes, "Hey, man, you a pastor here?" And I said, "No, man, I'm not. I work with our young adults. I just, I help out with the church in any way that I can. We have a lot of fun, and you should come hang out with us on a Sunday." Just the whole typical church response to somebody. And he goes, "All right, man, well, I got a question for you, a real question." And I began to realize the conversation was not gonna go where I thought it was gonna go. And so this man stands before me and he goes, I was drunk last night and, I haven't been sober in years. And I looked at him, and from what I can tell, he had heroin tracks up his arms. He had been drinking the night before. And he comes up to me and he goes, I was drinking last night and I was drunk. And I felt like my energy was off. And he's like, and I couldn't get over it. And I didn't know what to do. I felt like something was off inside of me. And I've been living this way for years. I actually live at the building right across the street there, and you could literally see his household from the windows of our South End campus. And I'd passed by this guy before, going to church, on my way to church. I'd passed by this guy, and he says, my energy is off, man. I don't know, something is wrong inside of me, and I don't know what it is. And so I then realized that this is possibly a cry for help. And so I stand before this man, and the only thing that I know to do is to share with him in so many words the reason I believe in Jesus Christ. I don't know how to continue with a conversation like that. How do you continue with someone says, hey man, I've been going through this and I feel like something's off with the energy inside of me. And so I said, look, man, I think that what you're recognizing is something that as human beings we all have, and it's a recognition of something other than the material world we live in. We all, at some points, will recognize and feel this. There's something external to the material world that we have around us. This isn't all there is. There's something greater and bigger that actually goes past what we view as reality. And what I think you're experiencing is the recognition of the human nature that God has given you. And so this man before me almost begins to tear up. And so I said to him, what you're recognizing, I believe, is that there is something bigger than you and I out there. He looks at me and he goes, I believe in God, sort of. I don't believe in Jesus for sure. I definitely don't believe in him. But I guess I believe in God. But, I sort of, I guess, And I look upon this man, and the God that I view and the God that he understands are probably two very different things. And so I look at him, and my heart was breaking. And I stand there in this guy's presence, and I'm just like, the only thing I can do is share my own personal conviction, because that's all that I have. And so I look upon him and I say, look, man, I think there's three things that I know. And that's pretty much it. There's three things that I know about God and Jesus, and that pretty much sums up my faith. I told him, I said, look, man, I could explain the historical proof that Jesus is real. I could quote him books from the historian Josephus in Jewish times, who actually conveyed that Jesus was a real person and was raised from the dead, and he was actually a secular person. I could convey the historical context of it, or I could go with the moral argument. C.S. Lewis provides it, and it's a great argument. How do we have morality if there isn't a God? I could have gone that route and explained to this guy. But I said, look, man, I thought in my heart that I wasn't supposed to. I said, I think there's three things that I really know. One, there is a God, and we can both agree on that. Or at least something greater than us. Two, he really cares about us. He actually loves us. And the tears began to come in this guy's eye, because he hadn't experienced love in a very long time. And I said, three, he actually acted upon that love that he has for us by sending his son named Jesus Christ. And that hole that you've been trying to fill with alcohol, with drugs, with women, no matter what it is, we're trying to fill it with material things, bro. We can't. You can't fill the spiritual hole with something here on the earth. You have to fill it with something that's external from us. And I believe the reason you were experiencing the feelings that you were last night is because you attempted to. He tried to cover up the hole inside of you with alcohol, with drugs. And it left you feeling a little bit empty, didn't it? He nodded that it did. And so I looked upon this guy and I said, do you believe in God? He goes, yeah, I guess so. I said, do you believe that he loves you? He goes, well, I really don't know about that. And so what I did is I held up the only thing that I had in my bag at the time besides my laptop is I held up my Bible. And I said, we actually tell us a lot about it here. This whole thing is pretty much dedicated to him explaining his love for us. And I went to one particular place. I went to the book of John. And if I can find it on these tabs. I went to the book of John here. And it's really not that big. Like, can you guys see that? Like, that's the entire book of John in the Bible. You guys see that? Oh my goodness gracious. That's the entire book of John, right? So I held it up before him and I said, I believe that while this entire book does convey God's love for us, I believe that he can prove it in just that much. And it's the life of Jesus. And I believe that if you're willing to concede by reading this small portion of scripture, as I handed him my Bible, if you can read this little bit and come to the conclusion that God loves us, then we can move on to our third and final thing, is that he acted upon that love for us. We both agree there's a God. We both recognize now that he does love us. All we have to recognize is that he did send his son for us. And he cares about us and he shows it. And so I handed this man my Bible and it was difficult for me. And it made me upset. Like, why am I struggling to hand my Bible to this guy? You gotta be careful as Christians sometimes that we don't walk by the people we're ministering to as we're on our way to church. So I handed my Bible and I said, look, man, does that make any sense to you? And he had tears coming down his face at this point and he goes, that made a lot of sense to me. No one's ever explained it to me like that before. They always try to argue with me. And I realized that if I would have gone the route that I felt comfortable with, this guy would have never engaged in conversation with me. And so I hand this man my Bible and I say, look, if you read that small little section of this Bible, if you read that, then we can finally agree that God did send his son, Jesus Christ, to die on a cross 2,000 years ago to fill that hole that you and I both have in our hearts. I try to fill it with things of myself. You are attempting to fill it with things that you like. We both have the hole there. And I believe that can only be filled with relationship. It can only be filled with relationship. It can only be filled with the recognition that God is real, he loves us, and he acted upon that love. To this man, I said, what do you think of that, bro? In front of South End campus. He said, I don't want to be fake with you, man. I said, please do not be fake. And he said, I have to wrestle with this a little bit because no one's ever explained it to me like this before, and I've never actually thought about it in the context of a relationship before. And so I got to go think about it. I actually have to go to work and then I have to sleep because I work third shift every night. So you have a good day. And so I said, can I pray for you? And so I prayed for him right there, and Antoine was his name. And off he goes down the road to what he calls his home. Holding my Bible in his hands, me not knowing whether he is going to give his life to Jesus or not. We don't know. Like that happened this morning. We have no idea what's going to happen. But what I do know is that today in this room, we have the opportunity to today. We can right now in this moment recognize that God is real, he's relevant, he cares about us, and he acted upon that love through his son, Jesus Christ. He died for the sins that we've committed, past, present, and the ones we surely will in the future. So today, my plea is nothing short of you giving your life to Jesus. We can restore our relationships. We can do it. We can save our families. But it requires the love and the forgiveness that God has shown us. How can we expect to love and forgive if we haven't accepted love and forgiveness first? So today, as everyone bows their head and closes their eyes, I'm going to offer every single person in here the simple opportunity to acknowledge those 3 steps. There's nothing magical about them besides that's the way Colby thinks about it. That's the way Colby thinks about it. Makes sense to me that way. And I say this every single time, I'm not gonna try to convince you to raise your hand because I think that would be not of integrity on my part. I'm going to simply count to 5, and then if you want to say, I recognize that Jesus died for me, and he died for my sins, and that's the end of it. If you want to recognize that, I'm gonna count to 5, and then you can raise your hand. I'm not going to try to convince you during those 5 seconds. I'm only going to count to 5, and at the end of it, I will say a prayer, and that will be it. We will then continue on our way, enjoying the rest of service. But we are on the cusp of a very important decision that I can assure you, you're not struggling with alone. I know my buddy Antoine is right now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you want to make that decision today to recognize Jesus Christ, that he died for you. God, thank you so much for just being present and evident in our lives. Thank you for dangerous prayers, God. Dangerous prayers like I prayed a month ago, asking you to send people into my life that didn't know you. Thank you for dangerous prayers like, come into my heart, Jesus, and change me and make me new. We love you, Jesus. We honor you. We are nothing without you, God. And we thank you for the gift of your Son. We thank you for the restorative properties that he brings into our lives, hearts, relationships, and families, God. We thank you for that. In your name, amen.